I'm going to go through this worksheet, and if you want to download the worksheet, you should be able to find a link to it in the video description. And I highly recommend that you actually work on it on your own before actually watching this video. Okay, so we're starting with some review practice, just adding and subtracting numbers, and I specify here, see if you can find a couple of different ways to do each calculation. So the ways that I actually go through this may or may not be some of the ways that you go through it. And there's lots and lots of ways to do even these simple like addition and subtraction problems. So one way that you might think of to do this is just to kind of read left to right and say 53 plus 9 is 62. And I'm going to go ahead and write the whole thing at each step so I don't accidentally lose any parts. Now 62 minus 28, let me think about this. This is 62 minus 30 would be 32, and so I'm subtracting 2 less than that, so it should be 34. 34 minus 10 plus 7, then this would be 24 plus 7 is 31. So there's one way to do it. Another way to do it might be to add all the positive parts together and add all the negative parts together. So we might do 53 plus 9 plus 7 minus 28 minus 10. So I'm just kind of rearranging them so I have all of the positive terms here and all of the negative terms here. And even here, I can kind of see, I like to add things that add up to groups of 10. So here is a 60. So there's that whole thing is going to be 69. 69, and I'm going to subtract 38, which adds up to 31. Okay, so there's 2 different ways to do it. There's lots of different ways that you might think of. Again, so don't think that because you did yours a way that I did not cover, that there's anything wrong with that. As long as you're using the principles of how we add positive and negative numbers together, you should be good. All right, so negative 29 minus negative 12. There's a couple ways we might think about this. Well, more than a couple, obviously. So one is subtracting a negative number is the same as adding a positive. So subtracting any number is the same as adding the opposite of that number. So this is the same as adding negative 29 plus 12. And so if I'm at negative 29 and then I add 12, I'm going to just quickly draw on a number line. If this is negative 29, adding 12 is going to be moving that direction. So it is going to be actually moving closer to 0, so this is going to be negative 17. Okay. Another way to think about this is I have a negative and I'm subtracting a negative. So I can think about this as I have a negative number and I'm removing some of the negativeness of it. And I can go, well, I mean, it's a little bit hard to write this down, but I'm kind of thinking about, it's the same picture, but I'm going to kind of narrate it differently. If I'm at negative 29 and I'm removing -12 negatives, so if I have like 29 negatives here, and I'm removing 12 negatives, that means that I'm actually moving closer to 0. So I'm removing 12 negatives, like that. And so I would end up at negative 17. So again, like, I think that the idea of this is maybe a little bit, it comes out more in the in how I describe it than it does on paper. Maybe another way to think about this is if I draw, let's see, positives, let's go with batteries. So if I draw, this is positive, and these are negatives. So then this is one way to think about this. If I have, let's see, I have 29 negatives. That's not what I meant to do. If I have 29 negatives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Okay, so this is 29 negatives. And I'm going to remove 12 negatives. Okay, so I'm going to remove 12 of those. I don't know what color to make this. So minus 1, let's, there we go. So remove 12 negatives. And so we're left with $17 negatives. Okay, so there's one more way to do this. Okay. So here we have 122 plus negative 39 minus negative 40 and plus 1. So, I mean, there's a few ways to think about this. I'm going to go ahead, as one way to do this, I'm going to go ahead and change this minus a negative to plus 40. And maybe I'll also change this plus a negative as subtracting, just subtracting 39, like that. And so, again, you can rearrange the order on this. So maybe what I'll do is add, as one way, I'll add up all of the positive numbers together. So it's 122 plus 40 plus 1, and then subtract 39. So that's 122, 162, 163 minus 39 is, this would be the same thing as minus 40 and plus 1, right? Minus 40 plus 1 is the same as minus 39, so that helps me subtract this. This is 123 plus 1 is 124. So there's one way to do it. Another way to do it, I personally feel like, starting out with getting rid of the double symbols, like adding a negative and subtracting a negative, is a good way to start. So 122, I'm going to start in the same place, minus 39 plus 40 plus 1. So I'm going to say, I kind of like this minus 39 plus 40, that feels good to me. Like, I feel like I can simplify that pretty quickly. So this is 122 minus 39 plus 40 is the same as plus 1. And now I have 122, 123, 124. Okay, so there's two ways to do that. So is this true? A negative number plus a negative number equals a positive number? The question is it always true? Is it sometimes true? Or is it never true? And if you think about this for a minute, you will see that it is sometimes true. So it depends on the relative size of the positive and the negative numbers. So for example, if I have a negative 3, negative number plus, sorry, I read this wrong. A negative number plus a negative number equals a positive number. That one is going to be never true. Because if I take a negative number and I add another negative number, that's just more negatives. So this is like, if you want to think about money, this is like debt plus debt is never going to put you out of debt, right? You actually have to add positive value in order to get out of debt. So I would say adding up negatives just give you more negatives. So negative 3 plus negative 7, for example, is negative 10, and so subtracting 3, this is 0. Oops, I should have, and negative 7 ends you up at negative 10. Here's an example. This doesn't really, like, a single example doesn't say why it's never ever true. In order to say why it's never true, you actually have to describe something about the properties. And so I might say adding up negatives gives you more negatives, or something along those lines. Or, yeah. How about if you start with a negative value? And add another negative value. It makes more negative. And never moves in the positive direction. Okay, and just so, like 0, negative something, and then negative something always gets you farther into the negative direction. Okay. Let's say that's good for now, and we'll save the next page for another video.